Salute Knicks Nation. The streets are buzzing as the coaching search is heating up. We have some latest news to discuss and get your thoughts as the Knicks are looking at a lot of candidates for the head coaching role currently in the NBA. KIDD, possibly at the top of that list. Chris Finch, Ime Udoka, and the trade winds are starting to circle as the Knicks' big offseason is just getting started. Guys, welcome in. Late Friday night stream. Let's get your thoughts on this thing as I give you mine. As always, salute Joey, Darren, and what's good, Bob? Knicks Nation. Well, the NBA Finals Game 1 last night, man. I'm going to get my thoughts down on that. That was an insane finish once again, man. Indiana continue to defy the odds. What a crazy finish that was, as OKC and their fans understand now just much of a threat that Indiana pose late down the stretch, man. Tough shot making. You can't take your foot off the gas for a second. That's going to be a series right now, man. Indiana only need to win 2 out of the next 5 to force a Game 7. And obviously Game 2 is going to be must win for Oklahoma. But for our New York Knicks, right, we've got a lot of reports coming out right now. And obviously the New York Knicks have a lot of ties to these guys out here now. KIDD, Mavericks coach. What are your thoughts on that? Obviously understand why the New York Knicks are interested. And first and foremost, great to have you with us tonight. Smash that like button. We're very interactive. We'll get through your questions and comments. And obviously tonight is all about you guys having that discussion about, moving forward, man. What a season it was. But, the Knicks organization, the front office, man, they made some bold decisions to let Thibs go. Despite, the reasons, obviously it was a risk. And the Knicks are going to have to nail down the hire. They're going to have to get the right guy. Because obviously they've heard from the players. I really like that as well, involving the players and getting their voices heard as a collective. Obviously there would have been a lot of support for Thibs from Jalen Brunson and Hart. But I feel like this was definitely the right move. The roster's changed dramatically, and Thibodeau, whilst, was a great defensive coach over the years, right? The defensive philosophy didn't work with this roster, and obviously the new coach is going to have a lot of things to consider, and obviously they're going to have to put forth their ideas to help get this offense first firing on all cylinders, and obviously the defense as well. But they heard from the players. I really like that. They put forth their ideas, and obviously they all felt, the front office felt that this team needed a new voice, right? So enter the frame. We have reports, Mark Stein, that the Knicks are expected to request permission to interview KIDD. The New York Knicks expected to formally request this permission if they haven't already. KIDD is considering his options right now, according to Scoop B. The Knicks reached out to the Mavs 2 days ago, and the answer, it's up to KIDD to decide if he wants to interview for the position. Sources tell Brandon Scoop B that KIDD has been pondering for a couple of days now whether he'd like to interview for the opportunity. KIDD was a Knick. Obviously, Coach Jalen Brunson was very encouraging for Brunson to explore the opportunity with the Knicks, get paid. He did that. And I think there's a lot of respect from the Brunsons towards the kids. Obviously, as well, we know KIDD is really close to Casey Smith, the new head of sports science with the New York Knicks. The training staff, KIDD, was really upset when Dallas let him go. And I really think that this is a strong possibility. I'm going to get my thoughts right now, hear from you guys as to what KIDD could bring to the table. But there's obviously going to have to be some kind of compensation. some of that compensation floated around right now, early stages, but the Knicks have that protected first round pick from the Washington Wizards. It's the eighth, top eight protected, and it most likely won't convey as a first round pick. It'll most likely convey as 2 seconds, but if that gets the job done, I'm okay with that. Um, Obviously, the Knicks are going to cast a wide net. It's not just KIDD. We're going to talk about the other candidates as well. But it does seem like there's a lot more smoke when it comes to a KIDD, who obviously played with the New York Knicks. He knows what to expect. Finished his playing days with the New York Knicks. But the familiarity with the team's leader in Jalen Brunson, I'm hearing reports that basically Rick Brunson is not going to go anywhere, regardless if it's KIDD, whoever else it is. It will be put to the candidates that, Rick Brunson is here. How do you feel about that? And then they'll go from there. But I'm hearing that Rick Brunson is very much part of the movement forward. Um, Obviously close with Leon. Leon's, Jalen's godfather, but obviously what Rick brings to the table as an experienced player, assistant, was here for the ride. I think they will love that continuity. I mean, outside of the obvious narratives that Rick is gaining more control, right? I don't think it's a man. I just think there's obviously reasons why Rick Bronson is going to be around. He brings his own skill set to the table. But yeah, one of the reasons why I feel like KIDD is strongly considered is because of the relationships between the Brunsons. Obviously, the previous hire, KIDD, it needs to be said, was the second finishing candidate behind Tom Thibodeau. Apparently, in the second interview last time around, KIDD apparently wowed the Knicks front office in that second interview. They ultimately went with Tom Thibodeau, but we understand how close Leon Rose was to Tom Thibodeau, and they settled with Thibs. But it's not lost on the fact that KIDD really, really wowed the Knicks front office last time. And I think this is where I get my opinions on KIDD as a potential Knicks head coach. I think there's some drawbacks, but I think there's a lot more positives. I think you're starting with his b-ball IQ, man. I mean, KIDD is one of the smartest b-ball minds going around. The way he played the game, he's got the experience now as a head coach, getting Dallas to the NBA Finals. I mean, he ticks those boxes. I think we need to get smarter as a team. Players, some of them don't have the best IQ, putting it mildly. I think a head coach that knows X's and O's to a high degree and is obviously, going to understand the feedback of what needs to happen with this new roster with Karl Anthony Towns, JB, modernizing the offense a bit more. But obviously defense is going to be a big part. It'll be interesting to see how these interviews play out. But there's more. There's interest from the New York Knicks in a potential interview with Chris Finch, the current head coach out of Minnesota. So that was a surprise to me. Yesterday we heard Ime Udoka. Obviously, I'm not surprised the Knicks have interest in interviewing Ime. What a head coach he is, but a lot of reports coming out that the Houston Rockets aren't interested in letting him get away. So completely understand that. But I do think the KIDD situation, a new chapter in Dallas with potential arrival of Cooper Flagg. And obviously, I think KIDD wasn't on board, according to ESPN's Tim McMahon, on some of the recent moves that the Dallas Mavs have made. Obviously, to trade Luka, to let Casey Smith leave for New York as well. But I'm on board with a potential KIDD hire. We'll see how the interviews play out. But it does look like the Knicks are very, very serious. They're getting aggressive now. They are keen to get an experienced coach, which I really like. Because obviously, Johnny Bryant's name is out there. And, I would love to hear Johnny Bryant, get those interviews, get a chance to get this job. Experience now as an assistant under some big names. But I do think the Knicks will be leaning heavily towards a coach that has coached at the highest level and obviously gotten their team, close to that championship, right? Eastern Conference Finals, Western Conference Finals, NBA Finals, winning a championship. Also, as we get to the next topic, fam, there is more news around a potential trade as some reports have come out, man, from Milwaukee. Jerry Wolfell says the Knicks' potential interest in KIDD obviously is linked to the close relationship he has with the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo, who hasn't requested a trade yet. Nobody knows the status of what Giannis is planning to do. But obviously, I think it's a strong possibility that he is out of Milwaukee. Very loyal player, but the Knicks are going to have to force the issue. And I like that they're doing this because this could be a once in a lifetime opportunity. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to clear the hump, to get over the hump, and to get a Hall of Famer, an MVP. If Giannis does request out, you need to be at the front of the line, man. You need to show that you're aggressive. But the report comes out that the New York Knicks are preparing to make a tsunami type offer to acquire Giannis from the Bucks, man. That's a lot to unpack, and we will tonight. Tsunami type offer. I mean, who could be safe? Is anybody safe when you hear those kinds of words right now? Obviously, the salaries are going to have to match. Neymar's in the place to be. Johnny, what's good? Great to see you. Johnny says if Thibs had a larger rotation, Grimes and Obi might have still been Knicks. Great to see those guys thrive, man, and their opportunities. I think the Obi pick was always a little bit puzzling from Leon to me because we had Julius Randle. But obviously, when Obi arrived, I would have loved to see Obi get some opportunities, more serious opportunities. But his defense was not as strong as it is right now. I think he's matured. But the shot, man, last night was crazy. Salute to Obi. Went 5 of 9, I think, from downtown. And was a big part in the big win as well. Our loss was their gain. 2 second-round picks. But financially, I think it would have been a squeeze. But we could have forced the issue earlier. Darren says the Dallas Mavericks are nearing a deal to hire Jay Triano as an assistant coach. So the dominoes could be falling, Darren. I do think KIDD, whilst he's pondering what to do, whether to accept the opportunity to interview for the job, my prediction, my understanding is that he will. There's a lot of connections to Jalen to coach a team out east, a contender. You've got Cat. You've got a team that's aggressive, a front office that'll back you to make a big trade. We have the leading sports science team with Casey Smith, who KIDD really, really likes as well. And look, let's face it, Dallas are in somewhat of a retooling, rebuilding scenario, right, out west. Cooper Flagg's going to hit the ground running, but I don't think he's going to really tip them over the top right now. Johnny says also KIDD's extremely smart. Happy he's under consideration. Yeah, I think just great basketball mind. I mentioned the drawbacks. I think there is an element of his coaching nature. He does like to let the game play out. He's a little bit less hands-on than a Thibodeau. And some of the Dallas fans feel like he doesn't make, a quick enough moves, which we've heard a lot with Thibodeau as well. But if the front office feel like he's the right guy, I mean, the experience is there. He's an absolute legend of the game. The way he played a point guard, getting in the ear of Jalen Brunson, the point guard, the best player on our team. I think he could be the point guard whisperer make life easier for Jalen as well. Understanding of the game, and just everybody increasing their b-ball IQ. I really like Jason Kidd's calm demeanor as well. I think that could be a swap of that drawback potentially, that he's a little bit more hands off during the games, letting the plays unfold, letting the players, um, late in game situations, navigate their way through the ball game. But he's calmer. He's definitely a guy that's more mellow than Thibs. And when you're talking about voices, man, it eats at you, man, when you hear that same voice for 82, 90 games. I think the players, would welcome that fresh voice as they spoke on. Um, Bob says, why does everyone like Johnny Bryant? He was with Thibs for 4 years. If he was meant to be coached, the Knicks would have moved Thibs to the front office and have Bryant start the season. There's a lot of respect from Johnny Bryant. I think he's definitely a guy that's earned his keep, earned his reputation right now. In terms of taking the next step, I think the Knicks wanted to give Thibs another year, after the shake-up. You bring in Cat, you bring in, McCall, more another year gone by with Jalen, Josh Hart. I do feel like Johnny Bryant was really interested in the opportunity in Cleveland, to be more hands-on. Thibodeau doesn't let his assistants do as much. He doesn't empower them as much. And Bryant was more of a William Wesley hire fam as well. And so I don't do this all the time, but obviously doing this, I get the opportunity to talk to some guests and some people connected with the Knicks organization. And just tying into what Ian Begley's saying here, I can add a few things as well from what I've heard. And that is that Leon was on board with making the call, obviously, to fire Thibs. Anyone who's saying it was just a Dolan situation, that's incorrect from what I've heard. However, there are some layers to this situation, and that William Wesley was a firm driver of suggesting a coaching change. Obviously, we know Leon Rose is his own man. He's the president. The buck stops with him. But William Wesley is just as powerful within the organization in terms of his voice being very, very respected, and him working alongside Leon. And obviously, over the years, we've heard that William Wesley, has not taken a liking to some of the things Thibodeau does, his nature and the way he conducts the head coaching role, the rigidity elements, not trusting his bench as much, but also in terms of where this is going, right? The assistants, Johnny Bryant, as Bob mentioned, William Wesley's bringing in Kenny Payne. He brought in Mike Woodson, and he also brought in Johnny Bryant, and all three of those guys left because Tom Thibodeau, he doesn't empower his assistants as much, right? He likes to run the show from start to finish. But obviously we have Rick Brunson among the mix. And what I've heard is Rick Brunson is not going anywhere, right? He's not a candidate to be the head coach, from what I understand. Things could change, but he's definitely not under consideration to be a head coach. However, the plan is that Rick Brunson will remain a part of the staff, and that he was also in agreement with this coaching change as well. So any talk that you might hear that Jalen's going to be disgruntled or Jalen's going to be upset, all of those things. Obviously, he respects Thibs, and so does Rick. Those guys are, have a long-standing relationship, and the respect is there. But it wasn't just Leon's decision that they felt like the team needed a new voice. It was a lot of people, Brock Aller as well, William Wesley driving it, but Rick Brunson was also on board with the change. Rick obviously throughout the season, you hear him offering suggestions to Thibodeau, some of the time clear the bench, get these guys out of here. Thibodeau not as willing to listen at times. And I just think Thibodeau's rigidity, stubbornness just kind of ultimately was the end, man. Not so much the results, man. I don't really think it was so much of falling short, whether it was Eastern Conference semis, Eastern Conference finals. I think that had less of a part to play. The process, the process in which Thibs conducted this situation, I think, was the larger perspective as well. Munch, salute, says, of course, KIDD wanted out after that Luka fiasco. Dysfunction as well will do that, Nico, Harrison, with that situation. But I feel like that relationship the Knicks front office had with KIDD, going back 5 years ago, and the fact that those two would have kept in touch, more attractive situation, just given the fact that we're out east as well. We have a roster built to contend as well. Buckle up. Level 40 says, does OKC coach need to be fired? Because that was worse than our game one. We'll see what happens after the NBA Finals, fam. But if OKC don't win game 2, they're in a world of trouble, man. Even right now, the series is swung because I'm a numbers person. I just look at the facts. Indiana only need to win 2 out of the next 5, and it forces a game 7. Now, game 7 might not be on their home floor, but hey, as the huge underdog, you take that, man. Stealing game 1, as I said, is always the easiest game to steal for the road team. Great to see you, James, in the building. Bob, with a super chat contribution. Appreciate this, Bob. Bob says, no Giannis or KD. We lose the role players in bench for players for one of them. Y'all mad about the Bridges trade or losing Dante? Go New York, go. We're about to hit on the trade wins right now, but I appreciate your perspective as always, Bob. You look at Indiana's blueprint, man. They're no ball dominant guys. Guys love playing with each other. The ball flows. Shot distribution is healthy. Hall of Fame coach to get those guys accountable. Great situation for Indiana. Unfortunately for us, man, we fell into that trap. They defend though. They swarm you. They trap. They're athletic. I think we do need to get more athletic as well. Giannis would help with that. KD, not so much. KD, I think he's still got a good year or two still left in the tank. But how much are we going to have to give up, man? That's what it comes down to, fam. I'm not going to lie. The tsunami, the wording coming out with the Knicks' interest in Giannis, man. Tsunami type offer. Anytime I hear stuff like that, it does scare me a bit. I like to think James Dolan isn't forcing anything, and I haven't heard anything otherwise, but obviously Leon Rose is going to listen to the owner in terms of having to sign off on a major deal. Salaries are going to be changing, but our payroll is already at a serious level. So we know James Dolan has no problem paying big, would love big names. But also, you can't fault Dolan in terms of getting guys like Casey Smith, getting great coaches, assistant coaches, paying them out, paying Thibs $30 million to go away if they feel that's the right call. If they feel like Giannis is the right target and it's going to cost heavy, they believe that Giannis is the guy to get us over the hump. We're so close. That's the thing. But yeah, you can't give up too many pieces for a KD. For a Giannis one, I think he's going to have to request the New York Knicks in terms of the Knicks getting that green light, man. You have to get the green light to go all in. And if it's a tsunami type offer, man, you're not going to do that unless Giannis gives us that wink. Johnny says agreed with KD. Giannis worth the load, though, as well. So it's a mixed bag coming out of the Knicks streets, as well. Many people welcome in to the stream tonight. Get your comments, questions in. We're going to go through the latest news, talk about the NBA Finals and the offseason that awaits. We'll talk a little bit about the draft as well. Summer League news. I tweeted out some Summer League news relating to an assistant coach that I'm familiar with from my area. The Knicks are going to be bringing in a really experienced assistant coach for their Summer League. We don't know what's the case with the rest of the coaching situation, as you know, everything's wide open right now, man. But the Knicks are flexing their muscles this offseason. That's one thing I can confidently say. The Knicks organization is going to get aggressive like they were last offseason. And I'm definitely not ruling out any of these major moves. Next up, regarding KD, Shams Charania yesterday conveniently leaked out the fact that the Knicks made an offer for Kevin Durant during last season. Now, it's fact that it comes out now, and nobody really knew about that earlier. And so, is that KD's camp pushing the relationship on? Is that his agent driving up some interest, some price? I think all things are on the table. I do think the Knicks have mutual interest with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant would be open to come to the New York Knicks based on Shams reporting. And Shams is one of the best in the biz. There's no reason to doubt any report coming out of Shams' mouth, man. He is the deal break. He is the newsbreaker. But to that level of interest, we don't know. How much is it going to cost? The talk is that the price is going down. So that's encouraging in terms of, like, you know, when you hear the name Kevin Durant, you know, in years past, it ain't going to be that level of offer. It ain't going to be, 3 or 4 first round picks and two starters. It's not going to be anything like that. Obviously, he's going to be a free agent after next season. So if you are going to make that trade, you have to obviously consider paying him handsomely. Maybe, a 2 or 3 year deal. He's 37 now. Oh, well, he's going to be 37, I think, heading into next season. And so, with that said, I do think that the Knicks will look at a Kevin Durant deal if it's reasonable. I don't feel like what I'm seeing right now. I don't feel like Karl Anthony Towns is going to be part of anything related to Kevin Durant. If it's a Giannis trade, Karl Anthony Towns more than likely going to be in that deal. I mean, he has to be. They ain't trading Giannis for OG and Mikal. These are probably going to be 3 or 4 team trades as well, just so that other parties are satisfied with some moving parts. But relating to a Kevin Durant deal, I don't think a Karl Anthony Towns is going to be in that deal. Reports out of Phoenix say that Phoenix have no interest in a potential Karl Anthony Towns pickup. And so, what would it take to get a Kevin Durant? Speculating right now, it would probably be a Mikal, Deuce picks or OG picks. The salaries do have to match, so it has to be one of those guys. I'm a lot more skeptical about a Kevin Durant trade personally, due to the fact that his age. I wouldn't give up OG. I think obviously defensively he's a huge piece. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think about it right now? Jose's G Insight says, CT, the streets are buzzing, fam. Hopefully the teams ain't gutted for any of these players in the talks. I have full faith, trust in this front office, man. They know how close we were this year. They're not going to do something that is going to be too much of a risk and set us back, fam. So when we look at a Kevin Durant trade, I think the price is going to be a lot lower than people think. But obviously, with with Greek Freak, man, Giannis. That's going to be an all-in move. But Brunson and Giannis figure out the rest of the pieces around that. I think we would still be in a great situation. I mean, Giannis is a great elite two-way player, you know. Um, Frank Martos, great to see you. Michael Drake, great to see you as well. Says that's why Dallas not holding J KIDD. CT. Frank says if we get Giannis, players will be lining up to sign up for that vets min. Let's go. That's another great, incentive, man. But obviously, Giannis himself is a game changer. You know, uh, my theory is you got to be basically, a team with the MVP or an MVP level player. I think to actually be favorite to win the chip. You look at this year, SGA last year, Tatum, Joker the year before that. You have LeBron, you have Steph Curry. I mean, MVP level player will change your fortunes, no doubt about it. Danny says, I want Giannis. He's a big time game changer. Him and Brunson finals. What do you think it would take to get Giannis? First and foremost, fam, it would take a multi-team trade because I don't think the Knicks and the Bucks, have the pieces to just, get it done straight swap. So it's going to take 3 or 4 teams, but it's definitely going to be Karl Anthony Towns, I think, leaving. They play similar positions. The salaries match. Obviously, going to take some more sweetening. The Knicks have some pick swaps. They have a first they can trade. They have 7 seconds as well. Tsunami type deal, man. It's probably going to be Cat and OG going to another team, or it's probably going to be Cat and Mikal going out as well. So, yeah, it's going to gut our depth, but obviously the roster becomes a lot more top heavy. But I mean, Giannis is better than any player currently on our team. Not named Jalen Brunson for sure. So, it's definitely a case of getting us one step closer, fam. And I do feel like NBA Finals would be, the close lock, with that situation. Jay from Puerto Rico salute says we don't have any picks. LOL. July 1st, as the new CBA year ticks over, we have one more pick that frees up. We can trade that one. We can trade the Washington Wizards pick as well, which is protected. We also have 7 second round picks, and we can have 2 pick swaps as well. We could trade those pick swaps too. But like I said earlier, it's going to take it's going to take a case of Giannis saying, I want to go to the Knicks, and this thing gets aggressive. And that's why I said 3 or 4 team trade. We might send Mikal Bridges. This is just an example right now. I haven't done the math, but we might send Mikal Bridges to the Houston Rockets. That'll help them out. They might say, look, Jalen Green, we want to get more experience. We want to get more steady. Jalen Green gets thrown into the mix. He can go to Milwaukee along with Karl Anthony Towns. Maybe Deuce McBride gets thrown in there. And then you start to look at the picks after that. Yeah, it can happen, man. I don't really feel like this is impossible. I feel like it's definitely a possibility if Giannis says, look, I want to go to the Knicks. What else can they do, man? They're going to make out with a good deal. It ain't like Milwaukee's going to get robbed. If they are trading Giannis, it's basically a reset. It's a reset for them, They'll obviously like some good young talent. Jalen Green, Cat's still young. Deuce McBride, whatever it is. OG, other moving parts. But the Kevin Durant one is a bit more worrying for me because it's like Kevin Durant is a player that obviously comes into our starting 5, but what are we losing? What are we losing? What are we hearing that it's going to take? A lot less than obviously a Giannis. Um, Ruben Nunez says we need depth. Any trade's going to hurt us. I'm more worried about the KD situation personally. The Giannis one, I'm all in, because you can build around those guys, like Frank said, veterans minimum guys. Um, they start to look at the New York Knicks a lot more closely, um, and I feel like Greek Freak makes up for a lot of deficiencies. Man, he can defend, he can guard the 5, the 4. Um, he's a human freight train. Offensively, we get faster, we get more athletic, less stagnant, less Jalen Brunson, like, slow isolation ball. Um, Also, the big domino is Jason Kidd. Huge mutual respect between Giannis and Kevin and J Kidd as well. So we know Greek Freak, man. He's been flirting with the New York market too. If the Knicks continue to go down that path of Jason Kidd and get aggressive and get that locked up soon, and I feel like we're going to hear a lot in the next week. Kidd's going to interview. He'll get permission. He'll interview. They'll discuss compensation. They might pull the trigger early. They might interview a lot more candidates. But I feel like the whole Chris Finch, Ime Udoka, that they're names that are just sort of planted conveniently so that it looks like the New York Knicks. It looks like their mindset is a lot clearer in terms of getting that experienced current head coach. But do they think that Chris Finch is realistic? Do they think that Ime Udoka is realistic? Now, I can't sit here and say that that's realistic. The Jason Kidd one is too. As we continue with your comments and questions, smash that like button. Knicks offseason is buzzing already. Um, I got this news coming from Australian media outlets. Shout out to Code Sports, but a veteran 6-time championship coach in the NBL, Brian Gorgian, is coming to Vegas, is coming to be an assistant coach for the New York Knicks Summer League team. Fam. I also tweeted this news out. It's fluid. He might end up being, given the fact that Thibs is out, his assistant, Dice Yoshimoto, is less likely to be in Vegas as well, and run the Summer League. This guy, Brian Gorgian, he might end up running Knicks Summer League, but he's agreed to be the assistant. I think this would have happened before the Thibodeau firing, but Brian is a 70-year-old, super coach in terms of experience, wealth of knowledge with international prospects, has a relationship with Leon Rose spanning decades. Him and Leon Rose have known each other, obviously through Leon representing some foreign players. Brian is a American Australian, basically moved to Australia, basically in the 70s, 80s. Been a 6-time championship coach, coached all over the world. Also has exposure to Ariel Hukporti, who played in the NBL in Australia 2 years ago as well. So Brian Gorgian, great pickup from the Knicks. He's going to be great for our Summer League Knicks. Take it from me, as this guy, if you're not familiar with him, is a great coach. But obviously, the connections of Leon Rose coming into fruition again. And like I said, I don't know what else is going to happen with the staff with Summer League. Summer League still 4 weeks away, but the fact that Brian is going to be there in Vegas is going to be great. He's also going to be running a 5-day training camp prior to Summer League, before the team moves over to Vegas. Brian is going to be running these Summer League Knicks through the 5-day training camp. But we obviously haven't heard anything about Dice, given the fact that Thibodeau is gone. I would expect that all of the assistants are out as well. They're all very, very loyal to Tom Thibodeau. I would expect, Dolan to pay everybody out, clear house, and let the new head coach bring in, some new assistants as well. So that's some latest news for everybody relating to Summer League. There's going to be a lot more coming, so keep it locked in. One thing I will say as we talk about the Knicks offseason, don't rule out KIDD getting the job, but also Johnny Bryant still coming back to be the lead assistant as well. Don't rule that out. Obviously Johnny's in Cleveland right now, but the relationship with William Wesley is big. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, if you guys are just joining in, William Wesley's voice is huge in this front office. The buck stops with Leon Rose, but best believe that William Wesley, James Dolan, and Leon Rose are the top honchos that make these decisions, discuss major moves as well. And William Wesley has advocated for Tom Thibodeau to be removed for a couple of years now. Brock Aller also was on board with the move. Rick Brunson was okay with the move as well. And I think ultimately Jalen Brunson is going to be fine, man. He ain't going to be, getting too heartbroken over this situation. But especially if Jason Kidd comes in, I do think those relationships will be welcomed. Rodolfo Q says, "Call me crazy, but I don't think Cat will get traded." There's a big possibility Cat stays. For example, if we're trying to get a Kevin Durant in here, Cat's not going to be part of that deal. If it's Giannis, if we can pull that off, then that's where Cat, most likely is going to be gone. But if we don't end up doing either of those moves, Cat could definitely stay. So I see what you're saying. I agree. I think part of the Thibodeau firing and welcoming in a new coach was to obviously look at this roster from a fresh perspective, a fresh set of eyes. Ruben says, "Can we get DDV back?" So that's not very likely from what I see, fam. Mainly because Minnesota really, really appreciate DDV. They appreciate him, especially the franchise player, Ant-Man. Ant-Man is grown to be close with DDV. Never say never in the future. He's got 2 years running on the deal until he becomes a free agent. And so Dante could be welcomed back sometime in the future. But I don't think Minnesota, man, are going to want to let him get out of here, to him get out of there. So as I bring this up, basically what the Knicks are going to be looking at in terms of ways of free agents and trade possibilities, right? The good thing is that the second apron has gone up. So the Knicks have a little bit more flexibility of making some moves on the margins and avoiding that second apron if Karl Anthony Towns stays and Mikal stays. The Knicks will have the $5.7 million exception. I do think they need some more playmaking, some ball handling, relieve the pressure off of JB. DeLon Wright's going to be a free agent, but I think he has mutual interest in returning. So if he doesn't get any larger offers, obviously these guys usually happen later in free agency, relating to the vet minimum guys. But I think there is mutual interest in a DeLon Wright, but you got to look at making another upgrade, man. Keon Ellis, Tyus Jones, Chris Paul could be had, I think, for the exception. Although recently Chris Paul, floated some talk about staying in the LA area, staying close to family. So I think we can rule a line out of the Chris Paul situation. I think he wants to stay on the West Coast. What do you guys think about some shooting? Like, I'm talking about knockdown shooting, like can't leave you wide open. Seth Curry, he was on a modest salary this year. He's approaching 34 years of age, but bring him in, I think, as a vet minimum guy. Could space the floor out. I think we need some wing shooting as well. But as discussed by Bobby Marks and other content creators, shout out, the Knicks need to give opportunities to Pacome Dardier, Tyler Colette, Kevin McCullough, Ariel Hukporti, and whoever else comes in by way of the draft. Fam, right, I'm going to bring this up from the Tankathon, as the New York Knicks will enter the draft with the 50th pick. And that's something that the Knicks can target as a specialist. I would love us to get a Kobe Brea from Kentucky. He fits the mold of a shooting guard, off-ball kind of guy, knockdown shooter, one of the best in the class. Hopefully he slips. The Knicks might need to move up. They might need to package some future seconds. But I think the Knicks front office will be aggressive, fam, if there's a player we like, man. Tyrese Proctor from Duke. I'm familiar with his game. He can shoot the lights out. He can handle the rock as a ball handling combo guard. Could we look out for another rim protector? We'll see what happens with Hukporti's team option. I expect that to get picked up or extended. We'll see what happens, right? Next comment, Deshaun, what's good? Hey, bro, we're going to be like Milwaukee, Dame and Giannis, and that didn't work. Minimal contracts doesn't work. We need a real team. That's definitely the concern, how much do we have to give up? We don't have a lot of picks anymore, fam, so that's tricky. That's tricky, man. I agree, man. I don't want to end up like the Carmelo years in terms of, a thin roster, hamstrung. That's why, these draft picks, these guys need to get an opportunity. We're dealing with first round talent, with Pacome, with Tyler Colette. Hukporti suffered an injury. He could have been a first round pick back in 2022, for those that don't know. So for me, like, Giannis is a guy you just go all in, and you figure the rest out. He's in his prime. But Deshaun, I agree with you relating to KD. KD 37, right? Ideally, I would give up one player, like one starter, and then KD replaces that guy, And obviously, it's not going to be Jalen. We'll figure it out. Jimmy UCLA says, finally, both our biggest culprits, Randall and Thibs, are gone. David says Giannis and KIDD coming in the building. I think KIDD got to be the first domino, and then we'll see what happens. I think it's interesting we haven't heard anything from Giannis, in terms of requesting out. I think he knows some dominoes, maybe some things are in play. Wait for those dominoes to fall. Then he might hit Milwaukee with that trade request. But he's definitely looking at situations, Giannis knows his legacy, his family, looking at situations, the Bucks, they've reached their ceiling. They're not going to be able to get over the hump as they currently constructed, fam. It would be a power move if the Knicks do get KIDD, in my opinion. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like I know X's and O's wise who's going to be the best choice, but all I can say is that if the Knicks want to be aggressive and they look at KIDD as being a big, aider of getting other help, then you got to look at that. He would welcome Rick Brunson on the staff. He would, would welcome coming in, working with Casey Smith, who he loved, over in Dallas. Obviously the relationship with Giannis as well. But that said, I just think KIDD is a guy that interviewed well last time. So clearly his philosophy with the front office is aligned. He was the runner up. It ain't like we're just plucking KIDD from obscurity, and putting him at the top of the pile. He was already runner up before they hired Thibodeau. And so this could just be a reconvening of minds, seeing if they align with each other, get KIDD's perspective on the current roster, yay or nay kind of thing, man. I don't think it's going to be a long saga dragged out. If KIDD is the guy they really want, I think, they could reach an agreement real quick. Look at the two situations, Dallas or here. KIDD knows James Dolan, is aggressive, and also, is a guy that will look after people. I mean, he gave some huge contracts out and made our coaches some of the highest paid coaches in the business, from paying out Hornacek, Derek Fisher, all these guys, Fizdale, Thibodeau now, Phil Jackson. We could definitely sweeten the deal and make KIDD, give KIDD a pay rise. And look, this reporting coming out of Milwaukee, right, where there's smoke, there's fire. Jerry says, could there be a Giannis KIDD reunion? There's a report the Knicks are asking Dallas officials for permission, and speeding up the timeline. They already have requested, courtesy of Mark Stein, who's very plugged in with the Dallas situation. Right, so we'll get through some more comments in a second, but next up, super chat from Freeway Hustler 21. Great to see you, Freeway. Freeway says, no Mark Jackson. If Thibs is our Mark Jackson, why would we replace him with Mark Jackson? Makes no sense. Yeah, I feel like Mark Jackson's name, I guess it speaks to the respect, the relationships Mark has, in league circles with the Knicks as well. A lot of people would still love to see him get a shot, but I feel like that timeline has passed, man. I feel like, similar to Thibs, we want to move into a new phase where the game is more modern now. Look at the 3-point shooting. I really feel like, that was a key decision in firing Thibodeau. We have 3-point shooters. We never deployed a 5-out 3-point shooting lineup, because Thibodeau was always worried. My feeling is that Thibodeau didn't like the pick and pop and didn't like Cat shooting as many threes because of the rebounding element. Think about that. If your center is on the perimeter jacking up threes, Thibodeau's thinking, who's under the basket? Who's going to grab the rebounds if my big man's shooting? So anytime Thibodeau was asked, oh, what about the 3-point volume? Your numbers are down. What about Karl Anthony Towns? Thibodeau would always scoff, man. He would talk about, yeah, but the game tells you what to do. I don't want Cat forcing anything. That's what he said. He said, I don't want Karl Anthony Towns forcing the threes up. It has to come naturally. The game has to tell you what to do. But what I feel personally is that Thibodeau, everything he does is focused towards getting rebounds and controlling the paint, which is understandable. That's a ingredient to help you win. But obviously, when Leon, revamped the roster and got Karl Anthony Towns, then we got to see that he didn't really give him, the 5-out lineups. So yeah, I think the game is changing. Look at Indiana last night. I mean, you're never out of the ball game with the 3-point ball, and I think that's where the Knicks got to go, man. I really feel like we fell behind in terms of we got out coached. Our offense got stale. You have one of the elite drivers and shot creators in Jalen Brunson, but we didn't create enough spacing around him. There's so many plays and graphics to bring up where, one of the Knicks are hitting a difficult shot and you see 4 of his teammates like within, 5 feet, and like nobody's spaced out. So I feel like a new coach is going to come in. They'll make it a point to make sure that a guy comes in with either an open-mindedness to bring in a offensive coordinator. I think that is key. Hopefully somebody who can, you know, somebody who doesn't have that ego where they want to control everything. Uh, if I'm a defensive specialist, I'm going to bring in an offensive specialist, or if I'm an offensive specialist, I'm going to make sure I bring in a defense first guy. So a part of the upgrade that the Knicks are going to get, in my opinion, is I think we're going to get some new assistants, whoever is the head coach, but those assistants' voices are going to be heard a lot more. When it comes to Thibodeau, he only wanted his guys, around him. Like I said, Johnny Bryant, Kenny Payne, and Mike Woodson all left because they weren't getting any value out of those voices, right? And so if we bring in a new head coach, we're going to obviously have an assistant that has more of a say. We get to see maybe Rick Brunson exercise some of his chops. As I said earlier, I've heard Rick Brunson is staying. He's not going to go anywhere. I don't know the degree or what level, what role he's going to have, but I assume it's just going to remain as an assistant. But he was definitely welcoming. Let's put it that way. Rick Brunson, Brock Aller, William Wesley, and Leon and Dolan were welcoming of this change to let Thibodeau go, and also Gerson Rosas. Not quite sure about that one. Appreciate all the comments coming through. Yes, Kevin McCullough says James, Johnny, agree. Yep. I think one of the frustrations Leon had as well, Dolan and the rest of the staff, is that, Thibodeau would make a last second change and we'd see like Huck Porty get a minute and then he looks good. It's like, why were you playing Jericho Sims the whole time? And then late in the postseason, DeLon Wright comes in, he looked good. Landry Shamet, these guys waited till the last second, to give these guys a chance. Now, how do we know Tyler Colette could have really helped if he played earlier? Darren says, I wouldn't mind Tyus or Seth, and also Tyrese Proctor's a stud. Watched his game at Duke. Yeah, look out for this when it comes to the draft, and we're going to have a lot more draft content. But the Knicks scouts front office love senior prospects, junior prospects, just no freshmen, sophomores, They like guys that are going to come in and potentially help right away. So look out for that. Look out for some guys that have a mature game. Marvin says, what about Mike Budd? No traction for me. No traction what I've heard or what I've seen. Mike Budd, I think, has the experience. Frank Vogel's name is out there. Luke Walton's name was linked. But I say this carefully. I don't mean this disrespectfully to those guys. But normally what happens, guys, when you hear this wide open coaching search, and take this as a heads up, you're going to start to hear a lot more names just thrown out there. That doesn't mean that the Knicks are really looking at those names. Basically, this is an opportunity now for agents of coaches, coaches alike, to get their names thrown out there. It enhances their brand. It doesn't mean that the Knicks are looking at all of these guys. It just, it's going to enhance their brand if these guys' names are thrown out there. Oh, Vogel, Mark Jackson, Luke Walton. We might hear some old school names come out. Also, the Knicks don't want it to look like they're really only looking at 2 or 3 guys. They want to make it seem like they're open to 30 names, but we all know that's not realistic. When you're shopping, when you're going to the store, you know what you want. I'm looking for the latest Apple iPod. I'm looking for the AirPod. I'm looking for the latest Gucci bag. I'm looking for the latest this, that. You know what you want, yes, could you be tempted when you go to the store and you might see something that you didn't realize was there? That could happen, but more than likely, you know what you want. You know what's good, and what reputation is out there. So getting through these comments right here, buzzer beater, salute. Great to have you here. Smash that like button, everybody. Uh, let us know your thoughts on this situation. Once again, another big off season for the New York Knicks. Aggressive, um, you know, opportunity for Leon and these guys to improve. I like that because you fall short, something's got to change. I'm not a proponent of just sticking together, bringing everything back. Right? Ultimately, I feel like if you're standing still, you know, people can pass you by. Uh, that doesn't mean I want everything to be shaken up. No, you keep the core, of course, but can we make improvements around the core? Absolutely, from the coaching, assistants, and the roster. I feel. Um, Michael Drake says draft picks. We must be very aggressive. CT. Yeah, so relating to like a Giannis, for example, right? Um, Relating to Kevin Durant as well, right? Remember Kevin Durant? I know some people still feel a certain way when Kevin Durant said the Knicks aren't cool and he decided to sign for the Brooklyn Nets. That seemed like that was forever ago. Um, but what's changed? Why is Kevin Durant suddenly interested in the Knicks? Why is there mutual interest? Why would a Greek freak be open to joining the Knicks? Well, you got to appreciate what Leon, even Thibodeau have done to an extent, signing guys, making these moves. It's all happened gradually. The Knicks respect, winning culture, the fan base getting hype. All of these things have contributed to, us becoming a more attractive destination. And you look at the West right now, man, it's a jungle. It's a jungle out there. Cooper Flag, the first round pick, goes to another strong West team. Um, Looks like San Antonio are going to be really aggressive, man. You know, so many teams out there. The pathway is tricky. One of the reasons why I feel like Jason Kidd will give the New York Knicks heavy thought is because the pathway is just easier. You're coming on board a stacked roster, a lot of talent and flexibility, but also don't we pay handsomely. But the pathway through the East, man, look at Boston. No Jason Tatum for part of next season. We don't know how much. He might come back earlier than expected, but they are going to have to break up some core of Drew Holiday, KP, Al Horford, maybe even Derek White. Reports he's going to be looked at by Houston as a target. But with us, we're in a great position. Plug and play. Come straight in, install your philosophy, uh, maybe handpick some of your own assistants. I think that's going to be a sexy destination, man. Uh, Johnny says Kid and the Freak. Buzzer says CT, what is it about Kid that we would want? Why is Dallas letting him go? There's always a drawback. With Dallas, firstly, I feel like they've welcomed Kid to, explore the opportunity. But I feel like Dallas is looking at their situation like Kid was disgruntled. Kid didn't like the Luka situation. Um, he was frustrated with Casey Smith leaving and joining the Knicks as well. Uncertainty with Nico Harrison. I mean, the rug was pulled from underneath. So if I'm Kid, I'm definitely trying to look at a more stable environment. In terms of why would Dallas let him go, I think they will look at their situation like we're welcoming Cooper Flag. We've got Kyrie and AD. They're approaching, their twilight years, and so I feel like they'll be looking for something as a fresh change, a new guard. Um, but also, they wouldn't want to hold KIDD back. If your coach looks at another team as a more attractive destination, you wouldn't stand in their way. You would get compensation, of course. And so for us, I think KIDD really impressed Leon Rose in the front office 5 years ago when he was the runner-up to Thibodeau. Since then, his brand has only grown. He's got to the NBA Finals. He's coached Hall of Famers with Luka. He's coached Jalen as well. Respected relationship with Jalen and Rick Brunson, helping him get paid in free agency. Also, great relationship with Casey Smith, who's in New York, and a good relationship with James Dolan and the Knicks organization back when KIDD used to play for the New York Knicks. So I don't know if KIDD is like the top choice right now, but it does certainly seem like that because he ticks so many boxes, man. There just doesn't seem to be another name out there that ticks as many boxes as a KIDD. A hire is going to be a risk. Replacing Thibodeau with a less experienced coach, that could backfire. And I do think that is something that the front office is weary of. With KIDD, like I said, he interviewed already with them 5 years ago. They know what he's all about. I think there's more of there's more familiarity and certainty. With that said, coaching in big games as well. Ruben says next year we have to go up against the Pacers, Cavs, Detroit, Orlando, and all young. Also, Philly might bounce back. I feel like Detroit. I like how you put Pacers, Cavs, Detroit. I do think Detroit are going to leapfrog Orlando. They're going to get Jaden Ivey back. They might be able to make another move on the margin. Orlando still have some shooting issues. Philly, I'm not worried about. Yeah, I think Pacers, Cavs, that's it. Look, Boston, we don't know what they're going to do with some of their moves. I feel like they're going to move on from Kristaps. I think health, you just never know what's going to happen. Johnny says Giannis is ready for New York. Giannis. Huge Greek population, great restaurants, 100%. Giannis, his partner, his family. Giannis is business-minded as well. But also, I think he's focused on winning, He just wants to get to a situation where he can win. Otherwise, he would stay in Milwaukee, where he's respected. But I feel like Giannis will get traded. I feel like the smoke is starting to starting to rise. Shams, Brian Windhorst keep talking about how crazy this offseason is going to be. There's going to be so many moving parts. Regarding Giannis, I think he's just sort of looking at the dominoes to fall, man. Huge relationship with KIDD as well. Let's see, man. This has all come to a head in the last 12 hours with the Knicks expected to request permission to interview KIDD. And then Scoop B has also revealed that the Knicks reached out to the Mavs 2 days ago for the permission, and KIDD has decided or deciding. Normally these reports are a little bit delayed, so I wouldn't be surprised if KIDD has already decided to meet with the Knicks or has a meeting already set up. We'll see. My gut tells me that KIDD does interview with the Knicks. He would be the leading candidate right now. But for so many reasons with the mutual relationships, he might end up staying in Dallas. He might interview with the Knicks and say the Knicks end up choosing someone else, or KIDD might end up saying, you know what, I think I'll stay. But my gut tells me more that KIDD will leave Dallas. If the Knicks offered the job, he would leave Dallas, for some stability right there. And I'm seeing a lot of Dallas fans say that you know what, good riddance. You know, let's get some compensation. It would be the Wizards' first round pick, which is top 8 protected. You know, it'll end up as 2 second rounders, man. I'm not sweating. I'm not sweating that. If that gets the job done, then if KIDD's the one that they really want, um, that'll be interesting. Uh, Eddie says, funny that the disconnect with Thibs in the front office. We try and draft juniors, seniors, and ready to play, and Thibs had no intention of playing them. Yeah, you know, it just comes down to Thibs just loves his vets, you know. Um, he'll play some of the younger players, but he'll do that as a last minute resort, you know. Player has to get injured, you know, player has to get hurt for him to trust the next guy. Because Thibs just wants to win every game, you know. He feels like the veterans will put him in the best position. But that's where Thibs is flawed. He looks at every regular season game as I must win this. If you heard Deuce McBride's quotes, he said, what we did in the regular season, some of that stuff got exposed because we didn't plan for the future. We didn't plan for like Indiana, you know. Maybe we were so focused on Boston and we didn't adapt. We didn't play the double big lineups, Eddie, earlier in the season. We didn't play DeLon Wright together next to Jalen Brunson for defensive purposes. We didn't insert Deuce McBride next to Brunson for offensive purposes. You know, so many things Thibodeau did was short-sighted. He didn't look at the future. He didn't really care about, oh, you know, what about next season? What if I played Kolek, Dardier? Maybe they'll be better next season. You know, no, he never thought about that. Um, uh, Michael D says Mike Budenholzer. Yeah, Mike Brown. Mike Brown is another name. I respect Mike Brown. I think Mike Brown would be a guy that is loud. You know, he's confident. He's coached some big games, Golden State, Sacramento. Um, Eckham Joe says, "What are your thoughts on Amir Coffey?" Yeah, great name. I like him. I like his game. I think he would be uh, a gettable for the price as a free agent. Had a coming out year with LA with the Clippers. Uh, we do need some fight, some size, some rebounding, some ball handling as well. So quite a few names to look out for as well, man. Draft night's going to be insane. Really looking forward to it. It's one of the biggest nights of the NBA calendar because executives, you know, everyone's on the phones. Trades are discussed. All of those things happen on draft night. Teams moving up, teams moving down. Um, I feel like the Knicks will make a pick. It might not be at 50. You know, we might find a way to try to get up if there's a player we really like. Um, Now, back to the front office dynamic, as you said, as Eddie said, I really like the fact that Leon Rose is his own man. He'll make the call, but the fact that he listens to other voices, you know, Brock Aller, Gerson Rosas, William Wesley, Dolan, and then he'll make the decision ultimately. It was bittersweet for him to let Thibs go, but after meeting with all the players, hearing everybody's perspective from Wesley, who I'm told was very, very aggressive, William Wesley was relentless for Tom Thibodeau's removal, right? For people connected to the Knicks, and certainly over the years, those reports have already come out. But um, with Wesley, you know, he has connections to everybody all over the league. Um, Not to say everything that he suggests is legit, um, but you know, Kentucky connections. He fought for the drafting of Emmanuel Quickly with the Kentucky connections. That worked out well. Um, you know, we'll see what else. I like the Kentucky pick, potential pick with Kobe Breyer. I think we need some knockdown shooters, you know, with gravitas Talk about your Malik Beasleys, Gary Trent, Seth Currys. Like, there's shooters and then there's makers. Like, just somebody where the defense is like, we're not going to leave this guy open. You know, we have too many times the defense is helping off our guys, whether it be Josh Hart, you know, somebody else, right? We need genuine floor spaces out here. I really hope we can look at that. You know, the thing with Hart, I love Josh Hart, but yeah, I think it's quite clear that he needs to start coming off the bench, and that makes our bench stronger. So that's something to look at. We'll see how it else plays out. Michael says pathway to the finals may be wide open. 100%. With the cap situation, guys, I'll bring this up. I'll bring the numbers up. And I know not everyone's really into the cap, how it all works. But if you look at just two of our closest rivals, you look at Indiana, Cleveland, Boston, right? They're in a tough financial situation. Indiana are going to have to pay Nembhard, Neesmith, Obi even, Miles Turner. They're on a Cinderella run, but I think their front office, their owner, is going to have to start paying serious tax. Otherwise, they're going to lose some of those guys. So that's something to watch. I'm not worried about Indiana for the long haul, because they're going to have to pay a lot of those guys. Their ceiling will get limited at some point. Boston, they're already going to have to break up the core. You know, that makes them worse on paper. With the Knicks, next season, the second apron goes up, the cap goes up. After next season as well, the Knicks have Mitchell Robinson's money come off the books. Mikal Bridges can get that extension if he's here, and the Knicks can still be under the second apron. So, you know, the Knicks are in a great spot financially, you know, and we might end up signing Mitch. We might end up going into the second apron. But the Knicks will have that choice, you know. We'll see how it all plays out. Eddie says Thibs was what we call an empty stat coach, just like players have empty stats that don't contribute to winning. Thibs says empty wins versus sub 500 teams that add up to not being on the same level as top teams. I feel like, yeah, Thibs is a floor raiser, but he'll definitely rely heavily on the team's best players, you know. There was reports that there's concerns, you know, Brunson's usage within the front office, that it was trending to a dangerous level where a potential injury could happen like Derrick Rose. You know, and I can't lie, that's something I've thought about in the past as well. Like, you know, we want Brunson to age well. You know, he could play long into his late mid-30s at a high level. But at the current usage rate that Brunson's on, man, you know, it's dangerous. As well as, you know, satisfying the rest of the guys, you know, like OG Anunoby could have been a voice in that exit, you know, interview. Like, he could have been one of the guys talking about his role. You know, I do lean towards OG when I hear guys, you know, question their role or don't know their role. To me, that's talkers like, I want a bigger role. You know, an OG, when he's getting touches, you know, when he's getting shots up, he looks so much more engaged on defense. You know, he's locked in more on defense when he's getting shots. When he goes like 10 possessions without touching the rock, you know, that should never happen. We do need more of a free-flowing offense. I like what I saw late in the series against Indiana with Jalen off the ball. Jalen Brunson was playing some of the possessions off the ball, but I feel like that happened out of necessity because Indiana were just pressuring. They were grinding JB full court. And so, you know, we had to make a switch up. But we did have other point guards. We have Kolek, DeLon Wright, Deuce, you know, Campaign. But Thibs was too late to sort of experiment. You know what I mean? Um, and I said this earlier, Shams conveniently reporting now that the Knicks made an offer for Kevin Durant at the trade deadline. Why didn't we hear this throughout the season? Why didn't anybody know about this? Well, it's a convenient time to plant this information out here. It gets the Kevin Durant trade business going from a Phoenix perspective, from a Kevin Durant camp agent perspective. It gets his name, linked to a desirable location as well, and also being mutual interest. That we heard that report throughout the season. There was mutual interest. So when you build it up and you're a winner, players want to come. But there's a timing element to that. One thing I want to hit on now as well. We continue to get through your comments. Off-season Friday night stream. Salute Knicks Nation. Gave my thoughts on the KIDD links. I'd be okay with the move. If the front office feels safe, they feel familiar, they feel like he can add the finishing touches to this roster. We heard from Adam Silver, man. I've been a proponent of the NBA regular season getting shortened a little bit, but Adam Silver rejected those claims, saying, I don't really see the benefit of reducing the number of games. But what I found interesting is Adam Silver said, we will continue to look at it. I would rather an earlier start. We'll continue to look at it. There's no data that backs up that injuries come from an 82-game season. However, I would look at an earlier start date. I hope that's the case. I would like that, because if you are going to stick to 82 games, just make the season longer, man. Make the off season shorter. Bring forward the earlier start of the season. We get a shorter off season. Also, it would ideally mean scheduling less back-to-backs. I think if you can start the season earlier, hopefully you can reduce those level of back-to-backs. It makes the product better, Nobody wants to see these back-to-backs where teams lose to the Charlotte Hornets because their guys just don't care. The guys just got off a plane and they're playing the Detroit Pistons, right? Third game in 4 nights. What do you guys think about that? Also, as I said earlier, pay no attention to some of the names coming out with respect to them, with the Mike Browns, Chris Finches, Luke Waltons, Ime Udokas. That's the Knicks and the other side's PR, situation, saying, look, we're casting a wide net, but really, you're not really looking at all those guys. You're just trying to show that you're conducting, a wide search, because it's not realistic. Ime Udoka, Chris Finch. I mean, there were teams that went to the conference finals, conference semifinals. Luke Walton as well. Hasn't been linked to the Knicks forever. Michael says, CT, whatever the Don and William Wesley want as a coach, I hope if it's KIDD, he will play everybody. I like the point guard element, Michael. I like the fact that KIDD, gets great production out of the point guard. He can see it from a point guard's perspective, so he could hold Jalen more accountable. I think there'll be better ball movement. I'm not going to sit here and say KIDD's going to be an upgrade on defense over Thibodeau. However, hopefully we can bring in a defensive specialist coach and we could share that responsibility. Right? That's what these assistants are for, man. I don't want a head coach monopolizing everything, man. Use your assistants. That's what they're there for, man. Hire an offensive-minded guru if you need. Don't be insecure. Hire a defensive-minded guy, man. Maybe Jeff Van Gundy. We know he doesn't want to, take over from his buddy, Thibs. maybe he'll be open to coming as an assistant. Maybe they end up giving Patrick Ewing an assistant role, a defensive lead defensive assistant specialist possibility, man. Yeah. Ecom Joe says, I would welcome any new coach that runs a 9+ man, ideally 10, in the regular season, develop our youth, due to the new CBA and depth shown by the teams in the finals. Yeah, less wear and tear, you know. If anything that I've really learned, especially over the last 3-4 seasons with Thibodeau, is that it really don't matter how you look throughout the regular season. How do you look during the business season? You know, I call it the business season because that's where winning is done. That's where the championship is won. And a lot of people took Indiana lightly, you know, myself included. Maybe I should have paid closer attention. I didn't think they would be this good. You know, they were stumbling and bumbling throughout the season. We beat them, 2-1 in the regular season. One of those games, Karl Anthony Towns had 40 points. One of those games, Benedict Mathurin had 40 points. It just goes to show how meaningless some of these regular season games are, man. It's all about experimenting and getting ready so that you're prepared for the real season. And I think it's fair to say some teams hold some things back. They don't show all their cards. If you're a smart team, coach, front office, and you're gonna go up against an Eastern Conference rival, why would you reveal all your cards, during the regular season? You just don't, man. The Miami Heat have shown you could finish 8th if you know you've got the studs on the team to beat anybody when the playoffs begin. Now, of course, you want to try to get home court, but that's probably a bad argument this season. What is home court anymore, man? Indiana have won game 1 every single round. Right? Let that sink in. Right? Home court might not even be a thing anymore, man. These players are prepared, they're locked in, they're focused. Winning a game on the road, some of these players prefer that. They thrive on that. On silencing the crowds. And I've given my thoughts on the MSG New York Knicks home court. It's not a home court. It's just not, man. Especially looking at last night, you got Oklahoma fans standing up, fans wearing the T-shirts, the decibel, the crowd, constant. For the Knicks, not to their own fault, but you look around, players get motivated. You see celebs, Rihanna, you see like Suni Lee, Anne Hathaway, you see all these celebrities, Kylie Jenner in the front row. And, these players, they see the celebs, the hoopla, the road players want to show out, man. It's not intimidating, right? When the crowd gets into it, yeah, it's great. Defense, the crowd's awesome. But before the game begins, I don't think any road team is intimidated, coming into MSG. So maybe something has to change. You see, look at the Clippers owner, man, Steve Ballmer. He buys out a whole section behind the hoop and calls it the wall so that these diehard fans can actually get into the building and sit baseline, and intimidate. Maybe Dolan needs to do something like that. What do you think, man? Get some diehards under the basket, man. Get some gangsters, some intimidators under the basket at MSG. You just put them next to the celebrities and make it different. Buzzer, appreciate you. Let's get it on the next one. So yeah, just some scheduling thoughts. I'm thinking of doing Friday night, Saturday night streams throughout the off season and keep those locked in. Same time. so we can at least do the weekly locked in at the set time. And then obviously if there's breaking news, anytime things happen, we come on. Oakley. Yeah, Oakley's been, he's been more present. Johnny says, hey, CT, watching OKC lose game 1 made me feel better about the Knicks choke. Thank you for reminding me, man. That was something I wanted to address as well. 100% agree. Not to the point where I feel better about losing to the Pacers because it was a missed opportunity, but I feel better about that we pushed Indiana to the brink. And they're a great team. They're a well coached, they're a great team, but they catch you by surprise. I think Oklahoma weren't expecting them, to lose that comeback. Just when you let your guard down and you feel safe, that's when Indiana pounce. So it's kind of like you got to cut their head off. Got to cut the head off of the snake, I think, before they come back. But what I've learned in terms of closing Indiana out is they speed you up. You can't get sped up, fam. I said this earlier. I feel like Thibodeau's decision to start dual big lineups, I think it hurt us in game 4 and game 6, because they'll try to speed you up and you have to be, playing with multiple ball handlers. So look how much they pressured Jalen Brunson. And then when he had to give the ball up to Josh was pressed into the corner as well. That led to a turnover, right? I know Oklahoma got out-rebounded, but I feel like when you speed it up, you throw the ball away, they'll turn you over. I think you need to fight fire with Indiana, and you have to be able to have multiple ball handlers, play with 3-guard lineups, and take care of the rock. They'll try to speed you up, turn it over, so that they can get more possessions, they can get their threes up as well. And so a young team like Oklahoma, they are prone to make some mistakes, and I feel like it could cost them, man. Indiana only need to win 2 out of the next 5 to guarantee a game 7, and they might even do better than that. And so game 2 becomes must win for them. Danny says, I would love Klay Thompson. Klay is a knockdown guy, a knockdown shooter. I don't think he's going to leave Dallas, but I have my worries over the durability now, Danny. I think the athleticism is kind of gone now. The shooting is still there. But with that said, I think we're aiming for the very top right now. Make or break off-season for the Knicks with this head coaching search. KD, Giannis, who's staying, who's going. All I know is that I think the Knicks will be exploring these options heavily, right? They're going to be aggressive, Look at the statement that they made in terms of the written statement. Everything that they're going to do is focused on winning an NBA championship now. It's no longer how can we make a step up? How can we, evolve? It's about winning a championship. That's it. You're 6 games away, 6 wins away from winning an NBA championship, and you fire the coach. To me, that tells me that they understand how close they are or were, but it also tells me that they understand that there's still a lot of work to be done, because sometimes you don't get as lucky. The East is going to be wide open next year, and we can't afford to trip ourselves up. We can't afford to get in our own way. In the case of Thibodeau and his rigidity. When it comes to next season, though, you never know. Indiana are going to be there. Cleveland, we didn't get to face them in the playoffs. There's nothing guaranteed. Boston most likely dropped down a bit, but Detroit are going to get Jaden Ivey back. Healthy Isaiah Stewart. I think the Knicks are going to strike. If there is that offer available to get a Giannis and he says, yeah, I want to go to the Knicks, but it's going to cost this, I expect that the Knicks will do it, right? I don't think now's the time where they're going to say, yeah, you know what, let's just wait out a bit. Let's just hold, stay pat. I can't see that happening because, like I said, you fire Thibodeau, you do all these moves, you bring Cat in, you trade Dante. I think Leon Rose wants to break the drought. He wants to break the 53-year drought right now. Um, you know, and a Giannis helps you get closer. So, we'll see how that plays out, man. Kevin Durant one is a bit more tricky. Um, in terms of tsunami offer, that's just a reporter, trying to be, cute. They're trying to be loud. Tsunami type offer, but it is going to be a lot. It is going to be a multi-team trade if it happens, man. It's not going to be Knicks Bucks straight swaps, all of those things, man. Even if I'm Milwaukee, Karl Anthony Towns is not enough, man. I want more. How can I maximize more? Get more teams involved. It'd be like, okay, Giannis, you want to go to the Knicks? Let's try to figure this out. Let's try to explore what we can do. We'll get as much as we can out of the Knicks, but we'll also make sure the Knicks can give another team some pieces and they can give us something. I do think Giannis will want to stay out east. I think that has been quite clear in some of the reporting that Giannis likes to stay out east. I mean, you're trying to win a chip. Why would you leave the east to go to the west? Unless he lands on the Golden State Warriors or, Houston, it's going to be tough. Heather says, hire Jay Wright, trade for Devo, sign Arch to a two-way contract. Jay Wright, Devo, Archie Diacono. It'll be a Villanova quintet. Would it? What's five? Mikal Bridges might go. You never know. But I mentioned earlier to a great question, how can we get Devo? Minnesota like him a lot. It's going to have to be something that makes a lot of sense for them, they're not going to, obviously Cat's not going to be in it. He's not going to go back. Do they want Mikal Bridges? Does Mikal Bridges make sense for Minnesota? I doubt it. HRM says tsunami. We can't afford to do that. I trust what they're going to do. They know how close we are now. Brock Aller is the best in the business at crunching all the numbers, man. But yeah, everyone's aligned to break that drought. There's no egos. They just want to win a championship. They just genuinely felt Thibodeau was holding us back to some degree, helping us get as far as we did, but holding us back from winning a championship. And I think a great example is the actions of the Brunsons, Jalen taking his contract, right? Everyone's focused on what Jalen did for, to help get Bridges in, to help make all these signings and trades. But ultimately what Brunson did is to help the team, right? Help the team be in the best position to get flexibility. And so Brunson wants to win. He doesn't have an ego. He just wants to do what helps the team the most, right? I'm pretty sure if you had Brunson in, off the record, with Truth Serum, that he wouldn't mind his usage going down. Playing 45 minutes a night, 35 shot attempts, right? It's too much over the playoff grind, OKC are going to be in the mix as well, but we're showing that maybe they're not quite ready yet. That's the thing. I went back and forth with some few reporters, actually, some lesser credentialed reporters talking, 3 weeks ago when the Knicks were doing battle with Boston and also Indiana. So many reporters, especially the Western Conference reporters, were arrogant. They were saying, this Denver OKC series is going to be the winner. Whoever wins this series has won the NBA championship. They were saying that the Pacers and the Knicks were going to get swept. They were saying that they had no business being in the mix. And I'm like, well, okay, let's just not even play the games then. Let's just give out the championship to OKC, if they want to put it like that. It's like they've never seen a sports upset, like there can never be an upset, in history. It's crazy. You got to respect the opponent, man. If you can get through 3 rounds of the playoffs, you deserve to be where you are. And I think Indiana or New York, we're going to get 2 games off OKC minimum. There was never going to be no sweep. The finals is different. That you get more rest. You get now 2 days between game 1 and game 2. The pressure can creep in. You see what Oklahoma did. They're ball dominant down the stretch. They can get stiff. Nice salute, says Giannis buying a house in New York and Thibs getting fired may not be all a coincidence. KIDD's name in the mix as well. Big respect for Giannis. But yeah, Giannis loves New York, man. It's his favorite road city, as he said. Huge Greek population as well. Conveniently gets to stay out east, right? Let's face it. He's not going to go to Boston from what I can see. Although I wouldn't be surprised if Boston try to hijack. Boston's not going to go down without a fight. They're not going to let Giannis, find his way to the Knicks. I'm pretty sure they would give up Jaylen Brown. Giannis and Tatum together could be something that the Celtics would try to do. But that would change. If Giannis says, I want New York, I think that's the best chance. I'm going to be honest. The Knicks don't have the best assets. It would have to be a 3, 4, 5 team deal in which, Milwaukee could get what satisfies for them. But I think we can get close, man. We have, some top level players. We have a pick swaps, heaps of seconds, and we have some young players that could actually, sweeten the deal. Worry about the rest next in that situation. So, yeah, I had fun tonight, man. Let's get ready to wrap this thing up. As the New York Knicks offseason, man, is under full swing. Trade wins and buzz coming up with the coaching search, the draft night. Today, the KIDD noise gets louder. I think we'll find out in the next day or so whether or not KIDD has welcomed the interview with the Knicks. It does seem like the Dallas Mavericks would not stand in his way. According to reports, Mark Stein, Scoop as well, B-Scoop, that it's all up to KIDD. He's free to make a choice, interview with the New York Knicks, and then 2 teams could discuss compensation, I think, if he does progress. But I'm pretty confident you're hearing more of these veteran names like your Mike Browns, Chris Finches, Luke Waltons, Frank Vogels, Bud, because it needs to appear like the Knicks are listening to a lot of candidates, but I think they really know who they like. What do people say? You don't fire Tom Thibodeau if you don't already know what you want, what you like. I think there'll be a certain handful of names that they would prefer. Ime Udoka, KIDD, obviously, but Ime Udoka is reportedly off limits. So I think that does really narrow it down to the relationships with KIDD, all of that, fam. But yeah, be well. I'll try to come on tomorrow night as well. I feel like we'll hear some more noise when it pertains to this situation. But I really like the Johnny Bryant name. People starting to say as well that, like, it's a risk. You fire Thibodeau. They have to be really confident in Johnny Bryant's abilities, and that'll come down to their exposure to Johnny earlier. The interview process as well. I could see him under heavy consideration, but is he going to beat out, coaches with more experience? I don't know. Anything's possible if you got William Wesley's backing. Also, franchise player Jalen Brunson, he might be like, yeah, I really was impressed with Johnny with my time. A lot of big name point guards have appreciated Johnny Bryant. Dame Lillard, Spider Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, I'm assuming, would have respect for Johnny Bryant as well. But there's a different level when you go up to coaching a team, to the NBA conference finals and also NBA finals. That experience of being in those big moments, I think, is key. But in terms of, putting together a great experienced assistant around those guys, I think that is going to be key as well. But as I said tonight, from what I've heard, the Rick Brunson presence, fit with the current front office and everyone, that's going to continue. So I think whoever comes in would be welcome to work together, with Rick still here as well. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Summer League. I don't think Dice will run Summer League. I think the Knicks might look to lock down a hire before that happens. But as I said earlier, that's why they've got Brian Gorgian down from Leon's connections, I think, to run a mini camp. And he might end up taking over Summer League. We'll find out, man. Veteran coach from overseas. Dirty Dancers in the building says, only possible sell on KIDD to me is if it can maybe build a D around Cat at the 5. Other than that, I got nothing. What about Giannis? Could this be a ploy to appease Giannis as sort of a layer on top? I think that would be big. Free agents potentially as well. But I do like the point guard element. It does seem like the Knicks want to form a pro. Talk about Chauncey Billups being looked at as well. Sam Cassell. I do think that the Knicks are looking at a former player. It does look like that has an appeal to them. A player that can understand other players better. The thing about Thibodeau was, great basketball mind, but Thibodeau wasn't a good communicator, as we're seeing now. His message, his voice, his communication has worn thin on many locker rooms. A lot of the time he lets the assistants do the communicating as well. So I think that is a big part, man. You always mention the Knicks players talk about, communicating. We've got to communicate better. This loss was lack of communication. So I feel like the guys got to get more comfortable with each other to speak out, speak up. And I think a player coach could help in that regard. Empower these guys to be more connected. As Dirty mentioned, the defense with Cat, I think those guys have to wear a lot of the responsibility because they're grown men. They played together for 90 games. I think the communication levels had to be better in the playoffs. Too many breakdowns when it came to that. But yeah, continuity helps. I think I would be open. I don't know if I've said this before, but I would be open to running the core back with Cat and with Macau, and you improve the bench. You make sure that there is some some adequate pieces around those guys, but you bring the core back, I'd be okay with that. I'm not trade for KD or Giannis or bust. We have the right ingredients. It's shown that with different coaching, we could at least get to the finals. A talent upgrade though would be helpful. Definitely, you need to use that exception. Try to get another vet in here that can play a bigger role off the bench. The Al Horford thing could be something. Great relationships with Karl Anthony Towns. But I think we definitely need a guard with some more size. I think with Brunson and with Deuce, we are lacking some of the size there on the perimeter. And Mikal Bridges is not physical enough in terms of being that point of attack defender that deploys physicality, and is a stout wing defender in terms of like Lou Dort, Caruso, those kind of guys. So that's something that I'll be looking at if we don't make a major splash. But this is the New York Knicks, New York City, James Dolan, Leon Rose, and something tells me that we will be streaming live at some point this offseason with a big splash. That's just the nature of the game now here with these guys. Dolan loves a splashy move. Leon, that's why he hired Leon with the connections with Worldwide Wes as well. Dolan's reinvigorated with the Garden selling out, Eastern Conference Finals, celebrities all over the place, the city buzzing as well. I think they definitely want to capitalize on that momentum, and they wouldn't have got rid of Thibs otherwise. I think they want a more open-minded coach on these guys as well with a new voice. So let's see how it plays out, man. We've heard from Josh Hart, who's expressed his gratitude towards Thibodeau, but we haven't really heard a statement. Well, I haven't heard any other statement from any other player. I think OG thanked the fans on Instagram and for the year he had. Also, Mikal Bridges, DeLon Wright, most of the players have, put out their off-season thanks to the fans and the team, their teammates. The teams partied or celebrated the end of the year before they move on for their holidays. But I didn't hear anything, referencing Thibodeau outside of Josh Hart. So that speaks volumes. Silence does speak louder than some words sometimes. And I feel like, yeah, Tibbs had the backing of Hart, Brunson, but that's basically it. I think most of the other guys, especially Mikal, OG, Campaign, Cat, I think they're not fussed about the Tibbs change. And we'll see how it all plays out. But big up to everybody out here. Salute to the chat. And see you soon. Have a great night. Peace, everyone.